So before I tell you the story of how I took my friend's soul out of his body, I will tell you the background story of how I came to that point. It was 1987 and I was about 13 years old. As a school child, curious about how my mind worked. I'd been reading my grandmother's books, quite old books, written by Buddhist monks on different types of meditation. And there was this one type of meditation that was talking about developing the mind to a certain extent where you could do something supernatural that you might call. There is quite a bit of detail that you could go into explaining, but keeping it short, I will try to go to what I did straight away. So first I had to find a dark room with candlelight. So I used my room for that and put the candle on my table, leaving the flame just at the level of my eyes. Following the instructions in the ancient book, I turned the lights off and placed my focus on looking straight at the burning flame. After keeping the focus on the light coming from the flame, I was supposed to close my eyes slowly. And with some practice, I was supposed to see the light coming from the flame with closed eyes, as if looking at it with my naked eyes. At that time, I had confused about if I should see the real candle or not. But later I realized that it was the stimulation I get in my retinal nerve cells that I keep firing with my eyes closed. You may need some idea about epigenetics to comprehend that part, theoretically how it happens. It was a bit frustrating for me to know that it was not easy and I completely failed on my first day of trying. I'm not sure which day it was, but after a few experiments, maybe after a few days, I succeeded to get to that level where I could see the image of the flame with my closed eyes. It was such a blessed feeling that I could not explain. And I noticed that I could see the flame without opening my eyes for about 15 to 20 seconds, and then it disappeared. But according to the book, I should be quickly learning the next to keep the light without disappearing. So I started practicing that. And that's when I started getting interested in coming to know about the phenomenon of hypnosis for the first time in my life, when I came across a book about fascinating things that you can do under hypnosis. But it was the 1980s when there was no internet, and finding another book about hypnosis even in the best libraries was not an easy task. It was like the mysterious hidden bits of knowledge of the Incas. Long story short, I managed to get a book on how to hypnotize from a friend's faith, who was a psychologist. The first time I got my hands on that book, the feeling was unexplainable. I still remember it was my 7th grade in school. Since I didn't like going to school, I remember this day as one of the good days, immensely significant. My first guinea pigs for my experiments in hypnosis were my cousins who used to visit me and some of my friends from the neighborhood, and I found this particular friend who used to respond really well to my suggestions under hypnosis quite interesting. Just with a key tag which I used to wave above his eyes and using the script which I found from the book, easily did he go to deep sleep. And each time when I did that, my heart pounded so loud with excitement, not knowing exactly what to expect. So there was a moment, you can call the moment when I did this a special experiment on my guinea pig friend. It was a day when his family visited us, and everybody was in the sitting hall with my cat, and I and my friend went to our laboratory to proceed with our experiment. By this time I had been trying hard to move ahead with my meditation experiment, and the progress of it was next to nothing. But I got this brilliant idea knowing that my friend under hypnosis theoretically could carry out any instructions perfectly. So began our next meditation hypnosis experiment. My friend quickly dived into his usual state of hypnotic sleep, very deep. The hypnosis was so deep that I could pinch his hand and could prick with the needle, and still he would not feel it, because I had suggested so to check the depth of the sleep. So everything was going perfectly. When he had reached the required relaxation and the depth of the sleep hypnotically, I suggested to open his eye, as and look at a pen which I was pointing up in front of him like a candle. I suggested he believed that it was a candle with the candle light in front of him, and that he could focus on the flame light. And like I used to practice, I told him that he sees the light from the flame of the candle with his eyes closed. And then I told him that he sees the light constantly having his eyes closed, that he has the ability to make the lamp light smaller or larger, and now that the light is large as a full moon in the sky. He was following my suggestions perfectly, and he was imagining everything as I give the instructions from the book of meditation. The next stage is the most crucial stage. I had no experience and had no idea what to expect from here onwards. But the book said on the set was that at this stage you might see stuff, scary stuff, like in a nightmare, demons. You may see parallel worlds. As the book said, my heart was pounding so fast and loud, and I had to become imaginative a bit more to keep everything under control and safe for both my friend and me. So to safeguard everything, I suggested or even commanded my friend that he could see only what I asked him to see but nothing else, and that he will obey my instructions. And now it's time to take his soul out, of his body. So I started giving instructions, asking him to go through the light which is large like a full moon in the sky, like moving through a stargate, so to say, suggesting that once he goes through this full moon-like light, he moves to a different dimension and that he could see very well what I asked him to see. And I was becoming more and more curious to know if this really works, and if he could really see something and somewhere else other than what was in that room by sending the soul somewhere else. At this point, the only place where I could compare with what he sees and what was really there were the people in that sitting room. So I quickly ran to the room, to the hall where everybody was staying, checked how the people were seated, in which order, and how many were there. After I quickly ran back to my friend, I asked him to go to that sitting room in his mind. And once he was there, I asked him how many people are there. I could see his lips moving, but there was no sound coming out. So again, I had to think of some way to communicate with him, since I could not hear his voice at all. So I asked him to answer a yes with his thumb and a no with his index finger, and he was doing that well enough to keep the communication. So my first question was how many people are in the room, in the sitting room. I got a yes as I was telling the numbers, and he moved the thumb. When I counted the number of people, there were 8 in the room, but when my friend counted it was 7, and he kept on giving 7 as the answer. So I had to run to the room again and check once again. And to my surprise, my friend's sister had moved and was not in the living room, and my friend was correct. I also asked the order of the people seated in the room, changing the sequence, and I had to run up and down to check, and I got the right answers from him. Even though as kids we were doing this strange experiment of the mind, I believe that not many kids had the guts to play around with hypnosis like this. So after this experiment, I brought him back to his normal senses completely fine, and I came to the conclusion that under hypnosis some of the complicated meditative techniques, even the ones that take the soul out of the body and need so much practice, could be carried out quite successfully. So this type of experiments were going on from time to time till I finished my med school and graduated as a medical doctor. And I was helping my dear colleagues and batchmates when they had some difficulties overcoming certain things. And I must confess that most of the pocket money and other cash that I received from my parents were used to study other fascinating techniques and some modalities, to learn about the mind while studying as a medical student. And today I realized that it had been a journey of mostly about understanding of my own self more than anything else. And I've come to a realization that I can accept myself whoever I am, whatever I do, with all the good and bad in me, just as I am. And I think that is the beginning of happiness and harmony of your life. And that is where you really stop for a moment and feel the fulfillment within you. And think for a moment what you can give more than you take to this world.